I stood in the kitchen, the Polaroid trembling in my hand, and felt the world I'd built with Julian crack open like a fault line. It was 2 a.m. and the house was too quiet, except for that faint hum from his darkroom down the hall where he'd been holed up for hours. The photo wasn't one of his artsy cliff shots I'd grown used to framing for him. No, this was different. A woman with dark hair, her face blurred by shadow, pressed against a man whose outline I'd recognize anywhere, my husband. The edges were worn, like it had been thumbed over 100 times, and I'd found it under a loose floorboard in our bedroom, a spot he'd laughed off as just the house settling when I'd asked about it months ago. My chest tightened as I stared at it. 5 years. That's how long we'd been married. 5 years of lazy mornings with coffee he brewed too strong, of me teasing him about his wild hair, of him promising his photography would take us somewhere bigger than this seaside cottage. He'd been my rock, the one who'd pulled me through the worst days after my brother Mark drowned. But lately, something had shifted. He'd started staying up late, muttering about inspiration. His phone buzzed at odd hours, and he'd silence it with a quick glance my way like I wouldn't notice. I'd brushed it off, told myself I was paranoid, but this was proof I couldn't ignore. The darkroom's hum stopped, and my heart lurched. I shoved the Polaroid into my pocket just as the door creaked open. Julian stepped out, his hazel eyes catching the dim kitchen light. He looked tired, his flannel shirt rumpled, but there was something else in his face, something guarded. "You're up late," he said, voice casual, like he hadn't been locked away half the night. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, forcing a smile. "What about you? Another masterpiece?" He shrugged, crossing to the sink for a glass of water. "Just tinkering. You know how it is, gotta catch the muse when it hits." I nodded, my fingers brushing the photo in my pocket. I wanted to yank it out, shove it in his face, demand answers. Asterisk, who is she, Julian? Why is she touching you like that? Asterisk, but my throat locked up. What if he lied? What if he didn't? I needed more than a blurry snapshot to unravel this. "Everything okay?" he asked, turning to me, his brow creasing like he could sense the storm brewing inside me. "Yeah, elite. Just restless. I'll head back to bed." He watched me for a beat too long, then nodded. "Don't wait up. I've got a few more prints to finish." I left him there, the weight of that photo burning a hole in my pocket as I climbed the stairs. My mind raced back to the early days, him snapping pictures of me on the cliffs, laughing as I struck silly poses, promising we'd build a life together. Then Mark died, and Julian had been there, holding me when I couldn't breathe through the grief. He'd been solid, dependable, or so I'd thought. Now every memory felt like a question mark. Back in our room, I shut the door and sank to the floor, staring at that loose board. It had always bugged me, how it wobbled when I stepped on it, but Julian had waved it off. "Old houses," he'd said with that easy grin. I'd bought it then. Not anymore. I grabbed a butter knife from the bedside drawer, don't ask why I kept one there, old habits from late-night snacks, and pried the board up. My breath caught as it lifted, revealing a shallow hollow beneath. Dust coated my fingers as I reached in, expecting nothing more than that one damning photo. I was wrong. Another Polaroid stared up at me, crisp and untouched, like it had been placed there yesterday. Same woman, Sabine, my mind whispered, though I didn't know her name yet. This time, she wasn't blurry. She faced the camera dead on, her dark eyes sharp, her lips curled in a smile that felt too knowing, too intimate. Like she was looking right at me. My stomach twisted. This wasn't some candid shot Julian had stumbled into. This was deliberate. Personal. I flipped it over, hoping for a date, and no anything. Nothing, just blank white backing. But the way she smiled, it wasn't just a fling. It was a challenge. A taunt. My hand shook as I set it beside the first one, the two images side by side like a before and after of my breaking heart. Who was she? How long had this been going on? And why hide it here where I could find it? Footsteps thudded on the stairs, and I scrambled to shove the photos back under the board, jamming it down just as the bedroom door swung open. Julian stood there, silhouetted against the hall light, his expression unreadable. "Thought you were sleeping," he said, stepping in. "Almost," I managed, my voice steady despite the panic clawing my chest. "Just needed a minute." He lingered, watching me, and I wondered if he could hear my heartbeat hammering. "You sure you're okay?" he pressed, softer this time, like he cared. I nodded, sliding under the covers to hide my trembling hands. "Yeah." "Night, Julian." "Night," he echoed, hesitating before flicking off the light and heading back downstairs. The darkroom hum started again, a low drone that felt like it was mocking me. I lay there, eyes wide in the dark, the Polaroid's weight pressing on my mind even though they were hidden again. That smile, Sabine's smile, burned behind my eyelids. She wasn't just some woman. She was a threat, a shadow slipping into my life. And Julian? He wasn't the man I'd married anymore. I didn't know who he was or what he was hiding. But I'd find out. I had to. 'Cause whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. I couldn't shake that smile, Sabine's smile, from the second Polaroid, the one that stared right through me. It haunted me all day, gnawing at my edges until I couldn't sit still anymore. Julian had been gone since morning, muttering something about scouting locations with that distracted look he'd worn too often lately. I didn't buy it. Not after what I'd found under the floorboard. So when night fell, I grabbed my jacket, slipped on my boots, and followed him. The cliffs weren't far, just a 10-minute walk from our cottage, but the dark made it feel like a different world. I kept my distance, sticking to the shadows as Julian's flashlight bobbed ahead. My heart thudded with every step, half expecting him to turn and catch me. He didn't. He stopped at the cliff's edge, where the ground dropped sharp into the sea, and waited. I crouched behind a jagged rock, breath shallow, watching. Then she appeared, Sabine. Tall, striking, her dark hair whipping in the wind. She moved toward him like she owned him, her hand sliding up his arm, her body pressing close. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. It wasn't just the sight of them together that gutted me, it was how familiar they looked, like this wasn't the first time. She glanced my way, sudden and sharp, and I ducked lower, pulse racing. Had she seen me? Julian didn't turn, too caught up in whatever she was whispering. I stayed frozen until they parted, her slipping into the night, him trudging back toward home. I waited, counting to 100 before I followed, my mind a tangle of hurt and fury. He'd lied. All those late nights, those excuses, he'd been with her. Back at the cottage, I waited until he was in the shower before I started digging. His jacket hung by the door, and I rifled through the pockets, hands shaking. A burner phone, cheap, black, not his usual one, tumbled out. I flipped it open, scrolling through texts that hit like punches. Asterisk, miss me yet? Asterisk from her. She suspects nothing from him. My throat burned as I read on. Plans to meet, flirty little jabs, a whole secret life I'd been blind to. Then, in his bag, I found receipts, hotels in towns I'd never heard of, dates matching nights he'd claimed to be working late. My knees buckled, but I kept going, driven by something hotter than pain. In the dark room, I spotted a metal box tucked behind his chemicals, locked, no key in sight. I tugged at it, desperate, but it wouldn't budge. A noise outside snapped me upright. Through the window, I saw her, Sabine, standing by the garden gate, her silhouette stark against the moonlight. She didn't move, just watched, her head tilted like she was studying me. I stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. How long had she been there? The shower shut off, and I shoved everything back where it belonged, barely breathing as Julian stepped out, towel around his waist. "You look spooked," he said, frowning. "What's up?" I swallowed the scream clawing up my throat. I saw someone outside. A woman. Watching the house. Crossed to the window, peered out, then shrugged. "Nobody's there, Elena. You're imagining things." Maybe it's the stress, you've been off lately. His voice was smooth, too smooth, like he'd rehearsed it. I wanted to grab him, shake him, yell that I'd seen her with him, that I knew. But that locked box, those texts, they weren't enough yet. I needed more. Maybe, I muttered, turning away so he wouldn't see the lie in my eyes. He went to bed, oblivious or pretending to be, while I sat up, replaying every moment. Sabine's shadow lingered in my mind. Her showing up here wasn't random. She wanted me to know she was close, too close. I drifted off on the couch, exhaustion winning out, but jolted awake hours later to a creak. Clock read 3:17 a.m. Julian's snores drifted from upstairs, but something felt wrong. I crept to the kitchen, and there it was, on the table where I'd left nothing but a coffee mug, a new Polaroid. It was me. Asleep on the couch, my head tilted back, taken maybe an hour ago. My stomach dropped. Someone had been inside. I flipped it over, and a note was taped to the back, scrawled in sharp, slanted handwriting. Asterisk, I see you too. Asterisk, my hand shook as I clutched it, the room spinning. She'd been here, right here, while I slept, while Julian slept, and neither of us had known. I checked the locks, still bolted, no sign of a break-in. How? The question clawed at me, but worse was the realization sinking in. This wasn't just an affair. Sabine wasn't just some fling stealing my husband. She was playing a game, one I didn't understand yet, and I was part of it whether I wanted to be or not. I sank to the floor, the photo crumpled in my fist, and stared at the darkroom door. Whatever Julian was hiding in there, whatever Sabine wanted, it was bigger than betrayal. And it was coming for me. Morning came too fast. Julian shuffled in, yawning, acting like nothing had happened. I hid the Polaroid in my sleeve, watching him over my coffee. "Sleep okay?" he asked, oblivious. "Fine," I lied, my voice steady despite the terror coiling inside. "You?" "Like a rock," he said, smiling that old easy smile I used to love. Made me sick now. He didn't know I'd seen them, didn't know I had proof, or that Sabine had been here, inches from us. I kept my face blank, but my mind raced. I'd find that key. I'd get into that box. Because whatever they were up to, I wasn't going to let her win, not without a fight. I couldn't sleep after finding that Polaroid of me on the couch, Sabine's note, asterisk, I see you too, asterisk, searing into my brain. Sat hidden in my pocket all day, a ticking bomb, while Julian hummed around the house like nothing was wrong. He didn't know I'd followed him to the cliffs, didn't know I'd seen her, held her texts in my hands. But I needed more than suspicion, I needed the truth locked in that darkroom box. So when he left that evening, claiming he had to drop off prints, I grabbed a hairpin from my dresser and headed for his sanctuary. The darkroom door wasn't locked, just latched, and I slipped inside, the faint red glow from his safe light casting shadows that made my skin crawl. The box sat where I'd last seen it, behind a row of chemicals, its metal glinting like it was daring me. I knelt, hands unsteady, and worked the hairpin into the lock. Every click felt too loud, every second stretching as I waited for Julian to barge in. Then it gave, a soft snick, and the lid popped open. My breath caught as I pulled out a stack of Polaroids, the first one hitting me like a slap. Julian and Sabine, her arms around his neck, his smile wide and unguarded. Proof undeniable that he'd betrayed me. But the next one stopped me cold. Sabine again, with different men, strangers, their faces hollow, their eyes distant. 5, 6 photos, all the same vibe, her clinging, them caught in her web. Then the bottom of the stack, a photo that sucked the air from my lungs. Sabine, smirking, stood beside my brother Mark, his arms slung over her shoulders. The date scrawled on the back, 2 weeks before he drowned. 2 years ago, when I'd lost him to the sea, when Julian had held me through the sobs and promised we'd get through it. Mark's death had been ruled an accident, slipped on the cliffs, they said, but I'd never bought it. He'd been too careful, too alive. Now here he was, tied to her. Memories crashed in. Mark laughing at my terrible cooking, teaching me to swim when we were kids, then gone, leaving a hole nothing filled. Julian had been my lifeline then, or so I'd thought. I gripped the photo, knuckles white as questions spun wild. How did Sabine know Mark? Why was she with Julian now? What did it mean? The darkroom felt like it was closing in, but I shoved the pictures back and locked the box, my mind racing. I had to confront him. No more games. He walked in an hour later, tossing his keys on the counter, and I didn't wait. "Who's Sabine?" I demanded, voice sharp enough to cut through his casual, "Hey." He froze, eyes darting to me, then away. "What are you talking about?" he said, but his tone was off, too high, too quick. "I saw you. On the cliffs. With her." I stepped closer, watching him unravel. "And I found the phone, the receipts. Don't lie to me, Julian." He rubbed his face, shoulders slumping. Okay, yeah, there's someone. It's just a fling, Elena. Stupid, I know. I'm sorry." "A fling." I laughed, bitter and hollow. "She's been outside our house. She broke in last night, left a picture of me sleeping. That's not a fling, Julian. That's insane." His face paled and he took a step back. "She, what?" "No, that's not, she wouldn't." "She did." I pulled the Polaroid from my pocket, the one with her note, and shoved it at him. "Explain this. And explain why she knew Mark." He stared at it, then at me, and something shifted. Fear, real fear, flickered in his eyes. "Mark? How do you?" "I found the pictures. In your box. Her with you, her with him. What the hell is going on?" He sank into a chair, hands trembling. "I didn't know about Mark at first. She came into my life after he died. Said she'd heard about you, wanted to help. I was a mess, Elena. You were grieving, I was lost. It just happened." "Help," I snapped. "She's stalking me. She's dangerous and you're scared of her. Don't pretend you're not." He wouldn't meet my gaze, just muttered, "She's intense, yeah. But it's over. I'll end it." Before I could press him, a crash shattered the moment. A rock smashed through our bedroom window upstairs, glass tinkling down. I ran up, Julian behind me, and found it on the floor, another Polaroid tied to it. Me walking to the cliffs earlier, alone. "Soon," scrawled in red ink across the bottom. My stomach twisted as I held it up, Julian's gasp confirming he saw it too. "She's here," I whispered, peering out the broken window. A shadow moved down the lane, Sabine's car, pulling away slow like she wanted me to see. "She's not just a fling," I said, turning to him. "She's after me. And Mark, she was there when he died, wasn't she?" He shook his head, frantic. "I don't know, I swear." "Stop lying," I yelled, the photo crumpling in my fist. "She's targeting us, me, because of him. She's done this before, hasn't she? Those other men in the pictures, they're gone too, aren't they?" He didn't answer, just stared at the floor, and that silence was all I needed. Sabine wasn't random. She preyed on people like us, broken, vulnerable, and Julian had let her in. Mark's death flashed behind my eyes, not an accident but a push, a fall, her smirk as he sank. And now she wanted me next. Julian was her tool, her way in, and he was too weak or too scared to stop her. "She's coming for me," I said, voice steady despite the dread clawing inside. "And you're going to help me stop her. Or I'll do it alone." He looked up, pale and small, and I saw it then. He wasn't my husband anymore. He was a stranger, caught in her trap. But I wasn't. Not yet. Sabine had started this game, but I'd finish it, one way or another. I'd had enough of Sabine's games, her Polaroids, her taunts, the way she'd wormed into my life and ripped it apart. After that rock smashed through our window with her "soon" scrawled in red, I knew waiting wasn't an option. She wanted me scared, cornered, but I wasn't going down without a fight. So I grabbed Julian's burner phone from his jacket while he slept, my fingers steady despite the rage boiling inside, and typed, "*, meet me at the cliffs. It's over." Asterisk I hit send, watching Sabine's name light up the screen and prayed she'd bite. She did within minutes a reply, asterisk good. I'm done playing too. Asterisk. Julian didn't get a choice. I woke him at dawn, shoving the phone in his face. We're ending this. Now. You're coming with me. His eyes widened, still bleary from sleep, but he saw the steel in mine and nodded, mute and pale. He'd admitted enough last night. His affair, his fear of her, but I didn't trust him to fix this alone. He'd let her in, let her stalk me, maybe even let her kill Mark. This was on him as much as her, and he'd face it. We drove to the cliffs in silence, the burner phone buzzing once more, asterisk on my way asterisk as I gripped the wheel. Julian fidgeted beside me, his hands twisting in his lap. What's the plan? He finally mumbled. Confront her, I said, voice flat. Get the truth. Top her. He swallowed hard. She's not right, Elena. You don't know what she's capable of. I do, I snapped. She killed Mark. She's coming for me. And you let it happen. He flinched, but didn't argue. Good. I parked near the cliff's edge, the sea churning below, and dragged him out. The wind hit us hard, tugging at my jacket as we waited. Then she came, Sabine, striding from the shadows like she owned the place, her dark hair wild, her smile sharp enough to cut. She stopped 10 feet away, hands in her pockets, and tilted her head. Both of you, she said, voice smooth and mocking. How sweet. Cut the crap, I shot back, stepping forward. I know what you are. I know what you did to Mark. Her smile widened, and she glanced at Julian, who shrank under her gaze. Did he tell you that? Or did you figure it out from my little keepsakes? You killed him, I said, my fists clenching. My brother. Why? She laughed, a low, cruel sound that made my skin crawl. Because I could. He was easy, lonely, broken after your parents split. A push off the cliffs, and he was gone. Then I found you two so perfect in your grief. Julian was just the bonus. I lunged, but Julian grabbed my arm, his voice shaking. Elena, don't. Don't what? I yanked free, glaring at him. She murdered Mark, and you slept with her. Sabine clapped, slow and deliberate. Oh, he did more than that. He begged me to take him away from you, your tears, your sadness. Said you were a weight he couldn't carry. Shut up, Julian yelled, his face twisting. That's not. It is, she cut in, stepping closer. And now I'm here to finish it. You're next, Elena. Just like Mark. She moved fast, too fast, pulling a knife from her pocket and slashing at me. I dodged, stumbling back as Julian shouted her name. The blade glinted, but I didn't freeze. I charged her, slamming into her chest, and we hit the ground hard. She snarled, twisting under me, and the knife nicked my arm, a hot sting I barely felt through the adrenaline. Julian hovered, useless, yelling, Stop it, both of you! Help me! I screamed, pinning her wrists, but she bucked me off, rolling to her feet. She turned on Julian instead, shoving him toward the cliff's edge. He teetered, arms flailing, the drop yawning behind him. Sabine, no, he cried, but she laughed again, wild and unhinged. You're done too, she hissed, pushing harder. I scrambled up, tackling her from the side, and we crashed together, inches from the edge. The knife skittered away, lost in the dirt as we grappled, her nails clawing my face, my hands yanking her hair. She was strong, fueled by something feral, but I was angrier. I thought of Mark, of Julian's lies, of every Polaroid she'd left to torment me, and drove my elbow into her jaw. She reeled, and I shoved her back, panting. Julian lunged, not at her, but at me, grabbing my arm to pull me from the edge. Elena, I've got you, he yelled, but Sabine recovered, slamming into him. The ground shifted, loose gravel sliding, and they stumbled together too close to the drop. I reached for him, my fingers brushing his sleeve, but Sabine's weight dragged him back. His eyes met mine, wide with terror, and then they were gone. Over the edge, her scream piercing the air until the waves swallowed it. I collapsed, chest heaving, staring at the empty space where they'd been. My arm bled, my face stung, but I was alive. Alone. The wind howled, and I crawled to the cliff's edge, peering down. Nothing, just dark water churning against the rocks. They were gone. Both of them. Then I saw it, Sabine's camera, half buried in the mud where she'd fallen. I pried it free, hands shaking, and checked the last shot. My face stared back, snapped mid-fight, defiant, blood streaking my cheek. A final taunt, even in death. I dropped it, my breath ragged, and sat there, the weight of it all crashing down. Julian had tried to save me at the end, too late, too weak, but he'd paid for it. Sabine had taken him, just like she'd taken Mark. And me? I'd survived her. Barely. I stood, legs wobbly, and clutched the camera tight. It was over, or so I thought. But as I turned to leave, the silence pressed in, heavy and wrong. She was gone. He was gone. So why did I feel like I wasn't alone? I made it back to the cottage somehow, my boots caked with cliff mud, my arm throbbing where Sabine's knife had grazed me. The silence hit me hard. No Julian fumbling with his keys, no hum from the darkroom. Just me, alone, with the ghosts of what had happened. I sank onto the couch, Sabine's camera still clutched in my hand, its last shot of me, bloodied, defiant, staring up like a trophy I hadn't meant to win. They were gone. Julian, with his weak apologies and weaker spine, and Sabine, with her venom and her blade. Cliffs had taken them both, and I'd walked away. Barely. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Instead, I gathered every Polaroid I'd found, the ones from the floorboard, the box, the rock through the window, and spread them out on the kitchen table. Sabine's face smirked up at me from half of them, Julian's guilt etched in the rest. Then Mark's photo, the one that had cracked this nightmare open. My brother, grinning beside her, oblivious to what she'd do. I'd lost him 2 years ago, and now I'd lost Julian too, not to death first, but to her long before the fall. The betrayal stung worse than the cut on my arm, a wound I could feel but not fix. I grabbed a lighter from the drawer, the cheap plastic kind Julian used to light candles when the power went out. One by one, I set the photos ablaze in the sink, watching Sabine's smile curl into ash, Julian's eyes melt away, Mark's face fade last. "No one will believe you were real," I whispered as the flames died, the smoke stinging my eyes. It wasn't enough, not justice, not peace, but it was something. A line drawn. I'd survived her. That had to count. I lunged, but Julian grabbed my arm, his voice shaking. "Elena, don't." "Don't what?" I yanked free, glaring at him. "She murdered Mark, and you slept with her." Sabine clapped, slow and deliberate. "Oh, he did more than that. He begged me to take him away from you, your tears, your sadness. Said you were a weight he couldn't carry." "Shut up," Julian yelled, his face twisting. "That's not." "It is," she cut in, stepping closer. "And now I'm here to finish it. You're next, Elena. Just like Mark." She moved fast, too fast, pulling a knife from her pocket and slashing at me. I dodged, stumbling back as Julian shouted her name. The blade glinted, but I didn't freeze. I charged her, slamming into her chest, and we hit the ground hard. She snarled, twisting under me, and the knife nicked my arm, a hot sting I barely felt through the adrenaline. Julian hovered, useless, yelling, "Stop it, both of you! Help me!" I screamed, pinning her wrists, but she bucked me off, rolling to her feet. She turned on Julian instead, shoving him toward the cliff's edge. He teetered, arms flailing, the drop yawning behind him. "Sabine, no," he cried, but she laughed again, wild and unhinged. "You're done too," she hissed, pushing harder. I scrambled up, tackling her from the side, and we crashed together, inches from the edge. The knife skittered away, lost in the dirt as we grappled, her nails clawing my face, my hands yanking her hair. She was strong, fueled by something feral, but I was angrier. I thought of Mark, of Julian's lies, of every Polaroid she'd left to torment me, and drove my elbow into her jaw. She reeled, and I shoved her back, panting. Julian lunged, not at her but at me, grabbing my arm to pull me from the edge. "Elena, I've got you," he yelled, but Sabine recovered, slamming into him. The ground shifted, loose gravel sliding, and they stumbled together, too close to the drop. I reached for him, my fingers brushing his sleeve, but Sabine's weight dragged him back. His eyes met mine, wide with terror, and then they were gone. Over the edge, her scream piercing the air until the waves swallowed it. I collapsed, chest heaving, staring at the empty space where they'd been. My arm bled, my face stung, but I was alive. Alone. The wind howled, and I crawled to the cliff's edge, peering down. Nothing, just dark water churning against the rocks. They were gone. Both of them. Then I saw it, Sabine's camera, half buried in the mud where she'd fallen. I pried it free, hands shaking, and checked the last shot. My face stared back, snapped mid-fight, defiant, blood streaking my cheek. A final taunt, even in death. I dropped it, my breath ragged, and sat there, the weight of it all crashing down. Julian had tried to save me at the end, too late, too weak, but he'd paid for it. Sabine had taken him, just like she'd taken Mark. And me? I'd survived her. Barely. I stood, legs wobbly, and clutched the camera tight. It was over, or so I thought. But as I turned to leave, the silence pressed in, heavy and wrong. She was gone. He was gone. So why did I feel like I wasn't alone? I made it back to the cottage somehow, my boots caked with cliff mud, my arm throbbing where Sabine's knife had grazed me. The silence hit me hard. No Julian fumbling with his keys, no hum from the darkroom. Just me, alone, with the ghosts of what had happened. I sank onto the couch, Sabine's camera still clutched in my hand, its last shot of me, bloodied, defiant, staring up like a trophy I hadn't meant to win. They were gone. Julian, with his weak apologies and weaker spine, and Sabine, with her venom and her blade. Cliffs had taken them both, and I'd walked away. Barely. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Instead, I gathered every Polaroid I'd found, the ones from the floorboard, the box, the rock through the window, and spread them out on the kitchen table. Sabine's face smirked up at me from half of them, Julian's guilt etched in the rest. Then Mark's photo, the one that had cracked this nightmare open. My brother, grinning beside her, oblivious to what she'd do. I'd lost him 2 years ago, and now I'd lost Julian too, not to death first, but to her long before the fall. The betrayal stung worse than the cut on my arm, a wound I could feel but not fix. I grabbed a lighter from the drawer, the cheap plastic kind Julian used to light candles when the power went out. One by one, I set the photos ablaze in the sink, watching Sabine's smile curl into ash, Julian's eyes melt away, Mark's face fade last. "No one will believe you were real," I whispered as the flames died, the smoke stinging my eyes. It wasn't enough, not justice, not peace, but it was something. A line drawn. I'd survived her. That had to count. The police came later that day, their lights flashing through the broken window. I told them what I could. Julian and a friend had argued on the cliffs, slipped in the storm. No bodies, they said, the currents were too strong. An accident, they called it, scribbling notes while I nodded, numb. They didn't ask about the camera, the photos, the blood on my sleeve. I didn't offer. When they left, I stood in the doorway, staring at the empty house. 5 years of my life, reduced to a crime scene I couldn't explain. Packing was next. I couldn't stay, not with the echoes of Sabine's laugh, Julian's lies, Mark's absence bouncing off the walls. I threw clothes into a duffel, grabbed my keys, and stopped at the darkroom door. It was still ajar from when I'd broken in, the box sitting open, empty now. I stepped inside, running my fingers over Julian's workbench. He'd loved this place, his escape, he'd said. Funny how it had become his cage, locking him into her. I turned to leave, ready to walk away for good when the silence shifted, too heavy, too alive. A faint rustle stopped me cold. I spun, eyes darting, but the room was empty. Then I saw it, a Polaroid sliding under the front door across the hall, slow and deliberate, like someone had pushed it through. My heart slammed against my ribs as I crossed the house, each step louder than the last. I bent, picked it up, and froze. It was me, standing in the darkroom seconds ago, my back to the camera, my hand on the bench. Fresh. Impossible. I yanked the door open, scanning the yard, the lane, the trees. Nothing, no car, no shadow, no Sabine smirking from the grave. But someone had been here, close enough to snap this, close enough to slip it under my nose. My hand shook as I flipped it over. No note, no soon, just blank white backing. That made it worse. Sabine was dead. I'd seen her fall, heard her scream, but this? This was her game, her taunt, alive and breathing without her. I backed inside, slamming the door, locking it tight. Cottage didn't feel like mine anymore. It was a trap, a stage, and I was still the target. Julian's fear flashed in my mind, his whispered, "She won't stop," and I wondered if he'd known more than he'd let on. Had Sabine had help? Someone else pulling strings, watching me unravel? I clutched the new Polaroid, my breath shallow, and realized the truth. It wasn't over. Not for me. Someone was still out there, their camera trained on my every move, and I had no idea who or why. I grabbed my bag, the camera, the photo, and bolted for the car. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out, the cottage shrinking in the rear view. I'd survived Sabine, outlasted Julian's betrayal, but this was a new fight, one I wasn't ready for. Not yet. As the cliffs faded behind me, I heard it again, faint but real, a click like a shutter snapping shut. Someone was still watching. And they weren't done. Hey, if you've been hooked by Elena's fight against Sabine and that chilling final twist, don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you're the first to know what happens next. Who's still out there? Drop your theories in the comments. I'm dying to hear what you think.